My in-laws never gave me a key to their lake house. So I bought my own lake house. Same lake, better view. We waved at them from our kayaks that weekend. Let me tell you about the moment I realized my in-laws would never really see me as part of their family. It was a hot July afternoon in Ohio. My wife, Shelby, and I were at her parents' place for a barbecue. Her mom, Celeste, had that tight smile on, the kind she always wore around me. Her dad, Richard, was flipping steaks like he actually enjoyed talking about golf. Shelby was inside changing our daughter's diaper. The conversation turned to the lake house. Again. "Oh, we're heading up next weekend," Celeste said, brushing imaginary lint off her perfect white pants. "It'll be nice to get away from the city. Just the four of us." I laughed, thinking she meant Shelby, me, and the baby. "No room for guests?" I asked, lighthearted. She didn't even pretend to smile. "Oh, it's always so cramped up there," she said. Besides, the baby's still so little. That wasn't the first time they said something like that. It was the 10th, or maybe the 20th. It had been 6 years. 6 years of holidays, family dinners, anniversaries, and birthdays. I married their only daughter. I was the father of their granddaughter. And they still treated me like a guest at best, a problem at worst. And the lake house? It was always their thing. Always just for them. I asked once, early in the marriage, if we could go up by ourselves sometime. Celeste blinked at me like I'd asked to borrow her jewelry. "Oh, the key's at the bottom of my purse somewhere," she said. "You wouldn't know how to turn the water on anyway." That was the moment it started. The slow burn. I told myself I didn't care. But every time Shelby drove up there with them and I stayed behind, every time she came back talking about how nice the breeze was off the dock, it ate at me. I wasn't good enough to be trusted with a house key. Fine. I started browsing Zillow in secret, just to see. I wasn't planning anything serious. We didn't exactly have money to throw around. But then I found this listing on the other side of Indian Lake. It wasn't huge, but it had a west-facing view, a private dock, and a small boathouse. It was old, but solid. Modern updates. Real wood floors. And it was ours the second I saw it. I called the realtor the next day. The price was high, but manageable. We'd have to put off upgrading our car, maybe hold off on that kitchen remodel. But I didn't care. I wanted something that couldn't be taken from me. Something that didn't need anyone else's permission. I showed it to Shelby 2 weeks later. She looked at me like I just handed her a dream. "You really want to do this?" she asked. "I really do." She nodded once. And that was it. We closed in late May. Quietly. No announcements. No family invites. The first weekend we spent there was peaceful in a way I hadn't felt in years. Just us and the baby. We bought 2 kayaks the next morning. Bright orange. You couldn't miss them from across the lake. Around 10 a.m., Shelby and I slid them into the water and paddled slowly, talking about nothing, letting the quiet wrap around us. Halfway across the lake, I turned and saw Celeste and Richard sitting on their porch. They had coffee cups in hand and identical expressions of confusion. Shelby raised her paddle. I did the same. They stared. Then Celeste stood up like she wasn't sure what she was seeing. We kept paddling. We didn't need their house. Didn't need their key. We had our own. And the view? Ours was better. After that first weekend at the lake house, something changed in Shelby's parents. It was like our existence on their lake was suddenly a threat. Like we'd crossed some unspoken line. At first, they didn't say anything. No calls. No texts. Not even a nice house. Or a fake congratulations. Nothing. But the silence wasn't normal. Shelby noticed it too. "They're quiet," she said one night as we watched the sunset from our deck. "Even for them." "Good," I said. "Let them stew." But the peace didn't last long. A week later, Shelby got a text from her mom out of the blue. "We'd like to have lunch. Just the 3 of us. No baby." She showed it to me, frowning. "Should I go?" "Only if you want to," I said. She went. And when she came back, she was pale. "They said you bought the house despite them." I stared at her. "Did you tell them the truth?" "I did. I told them we wanted our own place, and that they made you feel like an outsider." "What did they say?" She looked down. "They called it manipulative. Said you were trying to divide the family. Then my dad asked if you were planning to turn the lake into a competition." That made me laugh. Not because it was funny, but because it was exactly the kind of thing Richard would say. I didn't go over to explain myself. I didn't owe them that. Instead, I got to work. We fixed up the old dock. I built a fire pit in the backyard. We started inviting my family, my friends. We had weekend cookouts. We had music playing from the porch, kids laughing in the yard. It became a real place of joy, and Celeste hated every second of it. She never said a word directly, but we'd see her on her porch, watching, her lips tight, her face sour. Then, in mid-July, I got a knock on our door. It was a code enforcement officer from the county. Said someone filed a complaint. Noise violations, he said, and unpermitted dock repairs. I almost laughed in his face. We don't play music past 10, I said, and we didn't build a new dock. We just reinforced the planks. He sighed. I figured it was nonsense. But I still have to check. Shelby stood behind me, arms crossed. Let me guess, she said. The complaint came from across the lake. He didn't answer, but the look on his face told us everything. The next day, I filed the permits. Every single one. Even ones I didn't need. I wanted the paper trail. If they were going to try and make life harder, I was going to be 2 steps ahead. And it didn't stop there. One afternoon, we came back from town and found our kayaks slashed. All 4 of them, right down the center. Shelby gasped. What the hell? We filed a report. Nothing came of it. No cameras. No witnesses. But we both knew. That night, we bought new ones. And this time, we painted our names on them, big and bold, right down the sides. 2 days later, I saw Richard standing at the edge of their dock, just watching. He didn't wave. Neither did I. But I didn't look away either. They wanted a battle. They were going to get one. After the kayak incident, things didn't go back to normal. Not that there was ever a normal with Celeste and Richard, but the tension started to seep into everything. Shelby's relationship with her parents got weird. They started calling her late at night, leaving passive-aggressive voicemails about how things used to be. Celeste even hinted that Shelby was being influenced too much by me. Shelby didn't take it well. I'm 33, not 16, she snapped after hanging up on one of those calls. I make my own damn choices. But the thing that really made it clear how deep the damage had gone was what happened on the 4th of July. Indian Lake goes all out. There's a boat parade, fireworks, the whole deal. Everyone decorates their boats, docks, whatever. It's a big deal. And Shelby and I? We planned to host. We invited about 20 people. Friends. Neighbors. My side of the family. Even some coworkers who had kids around our daughter's age. We set up a grill, brought in coolers, even got sparklers for the kids. That morning, Shelby got a text from her brother, Matt. FYI, Mom and Dad are saying you're throwing a trash party on the lake. They're telling people not to go. Shelby stared at her phone, jaw tight. Trash party, she said. What the hell does that even mean? They think we don't belong, I said quietly. Never did. Shelby didn't respond. She just walked into the garage, grabbed a big American flag banner, and hung it across the railing of our deck, right where it faced their house. Our party was a hit. Music. Laughter. Kids running barefoot across the lawn. I saw Celeste standing across the lake, arms folded, talking to a neighbor. Pointing. But I didn't care. Then around 9:30, just as the fireworks were starting, one of my buddies, Dan, came running up from the dock. Hey man, you need to see this, he said. We followed him down. Floating at the edge of our dock were 2 of our lawn chairs. The same ones I'd set up that morning on the far side of the property. The chairs were burned. Not just damaged, scorched. Melted plastic. Twisted metal. Someone had set them on fire and shoved them into the lake. Shelby covered her mouth. Who would do that? But we both knew. That night, I installed security cameras. Front, back, dock, garage. I didn't tell anyone, not even Shelby. I wanted proof. Because this wasn't just petty anymore. This was escalation. The footage didn't take long to pay off. Less than a week later, the motion alert on my phone buzzed at 2:14 a.m. I got up, checked the feed. There, clear as day, was a figure creeping across our back lawn. Male. Tall. Hood up. He walked right to our fire pit, squatted down, and tried to light something under the stack of wood. The lighter didn't catch. He gave up after a few tries and walked off. I froze the frame. Zoomed in. Richard. I called the cops that morning. When they came by, I handed over the footage on a USB. The officer watched it, his eyes getting wider by the second. Looks like attempted arson, he said. I nodded. That's her father. He didn't argue. They brought Richard in for questioning 2 days later. He was released the same afternoon. No charges. But now it was on record. That changed everything. Shelby's brother called her that night. What the hell is going on? He asked. Dad says you're trying to destroy the family. Shelby lost it. He came to our home in the middle of the night with a lighter. He tried to set our fire pit on fire. But Matt just sighed. You really want to go to war with them? Shelby didn't hesitate. They started it. After the attempted arson and Richard's quick release, I expected Celeste and Richard to lie low. Maybe even offer a fake apology or spin it as some kind of misunderstanding. Instead, they went on the offensive. 2 weeks later, a letter showed up in our mailbox. Not a text. Not a phone call. A certified envelope from a law office in Dayton. Shelby brought it inside, looking nervous. It's addressed to both of us. Inside was a letter from her parents' attorney. The tone was formal, cold, and just full of crap. They were accusing us of libelous behavior, claiming we had damaged their social standing in the lake community by spreading unsubstantiated accusations. It also mentioned harassment through visual intimidation, whatever that meant. I read it twice, then laughed. They're mad we waved at them from Kayaks? Shelby didn't laugh. Her face was white. They're threatening to sue us, she said quietly. They don't have a case, I said. The cops saw the footage. That doesn't mean they won't try. That night, we didn't sleep. We talked about moving, about whether it was even worth staying. But the idea of running away made me feel sick. They want us gone, I said. That's what this is. Shelby stared out the window for a long time. They're not used to losing. So I made another move. I hired a lawyer of my own. Not to sue, but to put together everything. The security footage, the complaint records, the damage reports. I wanted a file so thick no judge in the county could ignore it if they actually tried to come for us. And then I did something I'd been avoiding for months. I talked to the neighbors. See, up until that point, I didn't want to involve anyone else. But now I needed backup. And what I found out made my jaw hit the floor. Turns out, we weren't the first ones they tried to push out. The couple who lived in our house before us sold it fast after a series of conflicts with the neighbors across the lake. That's how the realtor had phrased it. I never thought to ask. One guy, Phil, who lived 3 doors down, said they tried to get us fined for building a fire pit too close to the water line. Same crap they pulled on you. Another neighbor, Marcy, told us Celeste had once called the homeowners association on her for running an Airbnb because her niece came to visit for a week. They were bullies. Always had been. They just finally met someone who wasn't afraid to stand up. I started keeping records of everything: phone calls, emails, every time they stared us down from their dock. We installed floodlights, replaced the fence, even got a dog, not for protection, but because I wanted one more body between us and whatever nonsense they tried next. But then Celeste made a mistake. She sent Shelby an email. Short, but very stupid. It read, "This could all go away if you stopped pretending you belong there." That was the one that tipped Shelby over. She forwarded it to our lawyer without saying a word. The next week, our attorney sent them a cease and desist. Things went quiet after that. But it wasn't over. Because then came the inheritance bomb. 3 months after the cease and desist, just when things had started to calm down, Shelby got a phone call from her aunt, her mom's younger sister. She doesn't call often, but when she does, it's usually something big. Shelby put the call on speaker. I was sitting next to her on the porch, watching the lake, trying to enjoy a rare, quiet evening. "Hey, honey," her aunt began. "I'm not supposed to know this, but your mom has been talking to the family attorney. She's rewriting her will. Richard, too." Shelby's body went stiff. "Rewriting how?" she asked. "They're cutting you out," her aunt said. "Everything is going to Matt." The silence that followed felt like a punch to the gut. "They're leaving us nothing?" Shelby finally asked. "That's what I heard," her aunt said. "The house, the land, the trust accounts, everything." Shelby didn't cry. She didn't even blink. She just said, "Of course they are." She ended the call and sat there for a minute. Then she stood up, walked inside, and poured herself a glass of whiskey. She took it out back to the edge of the dock, sat down, and stared across the water. I followed her. "What are you thinking?" I asked. "I'm thinking it's time to stop reacting," she said. "It's time we did something first." The next day, Shelby called a realtor friend of ours and had her pull every property record around Indian Lake. She wanted names, prices, dates, everything. And we found something. The vacant lot directly next to Celeste and Richard's lake house. It was for sale. Overgrown. Undeveloped. But large. And best of all, it bordered their land. I looked at Shelby. She looked at me. "Let's do it," she said. We made an offer that afternoon. Full asking price. Cash from my savings and some help from Shelby's 401k. It was tight, but we made it work. 2 weeks later, we closed. And then I put up a big wooden sign at the edge of the lot, right where their property line stopped and ours began. It said, "Future home of the Thompsons." That's us. My last name, not theirs. The reaction was instant. Celeste showed up at our door within the hour. No knock. Just rage. "You're building next to us?" she snapped. "Why?" "Because we belong here," Shelby said calmly. "And we're done pretending we don't." "This is harassment," Celeste hissed. "You're obsessed with us." I stepped in. "You tried to burn our fire pit, Celeste. We're just neighbors now. Nothing more." She stormed off, muttering under her breath. We weren't actually planning to build a second house. Not really. But we could. And the threat of it hanging over her head, that was worth every penny. We let the grass grow wild on the lot. Put up string lights. Let people park there during parties. Turned it into a giant symbol of what she couldn't control. And the cherry on top? We applied for a short-term rental permit through the county. Not for our house, but for the lot. Just to list it. Just to show we could. They fought it, of course. Wrote angry letters. Showed up to zoning board meetings. But it got approved. Because we followed every rule. Crossed every T, every I. By the end of that summer, the entire lake knew what was going on. People started waving to us first. Inviting us to things. Asking about the new project next to the Westbrooks place. We became part of the lake. More than Celeste and Richard ever were. But it wasn't over. Because Richard still had one card left to play. We should have known Richard wouldn't just fade away. He's the kind of man who doesn't like to lose, especially not to someone he's convinced is beneath him. And to him, that's what I was. A guy from Columbus who stole his daughter, challenged his control, and, God forbid, outplayed him at his own lake. It started with a visit from a man in a tie, clipboard in hand. Said he was from the Indian Lake Conservation Committee. Just a standard inspection, he claimed. We've had reports of runoff violations on new lots. I asked for a warrant or documentation. He couldn't produce either. I told him to get off my property. 2 days later, we got a citation in the mail. $1,200 for unregulated shoreline erosion and improper stormwater management. Bullshit. We hadn't touched a thing on that lot since we bought it. No grading. No machinery. Just string lights and chairs. I appealed, obviously. Sent photos, permits, drone shots from the day we closed. But it kept happening. Over and over. New complaints. Noise. Trash. Parking. I spent half my weeks on the phone with county offices just explaining how we were in full compliance. Our lawyer started piecing it together. All the complaints? They came from a single name. Westbrook, Richard. Shelby lost it. She stormed across the lake one afternoon in a kayak. Didn't even warn me. Just went. I watched from the dock as she walked right up onto her parents' deck, fist clenched. I couldn't hear all of it. But her voice carried. "You are not going to screw with our life because you hate that I chose him." Celeste tried to cut in, but Shelby shut her down hard. "You lost the right to judge me when you watched Dad sneak onto our lawn and stayed silent." Richard didn't even look ashamed. Just sipped his drink like she was boring him. Shelby came back shaking. But something in her had hardened. "I'm done protecting them," she said. So we went public. Shelby posted a long, calm, brutally honest post on her social media. She didn't name names. But anyone who knew the situation could fill in the blanks. She included screenshots. The email from Celeste. The property complaint record with Richard's name. The burned chairs. The video still of Richard sneaking through our yard. The post blew up. Neighbors messaged us, offering support. People started whispering on the lake more than before. A few even told us stories of their own about Richard and Celeste. They'd made enemies quietly for years. We were just the first ones who didn't bow out. And then came the final blow. Matt, Shelby's brother. He called one night, late. "I can't do this anymore," he said. "They're out of control." "What happened?" Shelby asked. "They tried to get me to sign something," he said. "A revision to the trust. I think they're planning to sell everything and cut us both out." "They told you that?" "No, but they're not hiding it either. And honestly, I don't want it. I don't want any of it if it means turning into them." Shelby was silent. "I'm sorry for not speaking up earlier," Matt added. "I didn't know it had gotten that bad." But it had. And now, everything was coming to a head. Because Shelby wasn't the only one ready to walk away from her parents. They were alone now. And I had one last thing to do. After Matt called, things moved fast. He emailed us copies of the trust paperwork. Turns out, they had changed it. Everything was being restructured into a new shell trust that listed Celeste and Richard as primary owners of all lake assets, with Matt only named as successor if he agreed to non-detrimental family conduct. Basically, a loyalty clause. Total control. He didn't sign. That was when we knew for sure they were setting fire to their whole legacy just to keep it out of our hands. It didn't hurt like I thought it would. It just made everything make sense. They didn't want family. They wanted obedience. And now they had neither. I told Shelby we were going to finish this. For good. She didn't even ask what I meant. I spent the next week compiling everything. Every letter. Every complaint. Every voicemail. Copies of the burned chairs report. The video of Richard creeping across our lawn with a lighter. And I mailed it. Not to a judge. Not to the police. I sent it to every member of the Indian Lake Homeowners Council. I sent it to the board of the Lake Association. I sent it to the local paper. I even sent it to the realtor who handled their house purchase back in the day, just for fun. The packet was titled, "When the Lake Isn't Big Enough for Their Ego." It didn't take long for the fallout to hit. Celeste and Richard didn't just lose social standing. They got formally removed from the Lake Association board, positions they'd held for years. Their property was slapped with an official investigation for the dock additions they'd never gotten permits for in the 90s. Apparently, the karma was decades overdue. The final twist? Shelby and I got invited to join the association. We accepted. I didn't gloat. Not in person. But I did one last thing. I had a small box made. A cheap thing from the hardware store, painted gold. I put one item inside it. A copy of the key to our lake house. On the tag, I wrote, "Here's the key you never gave me." I didn't need it. We mailed it to them with no return address. That was the last time we ever reached out. They put their house up for sale 2 months later. Rumor is they moved south. Florida or Georgia, maybe. Somewhere gated, no doubt. Where no one would question who they were or how they treated people. And me? I sit on my deck most nights with a cold drink, watching the sun drop into the lake. My daughter's laughter echoes from the yard. Shelby's hand is always close. Sometimes we kayak past their old place. It's quiet now. Empty. The only waves that hit their dock are the ones we leave behind. And I never needed their key, because I built the damn door myself.